Hi everybody, we are going to go ahead and look a little bit more at line plots. I already started some of this. I am on the lesson 7 homework page, which is page 41 in your book, your new book, this book. Okay, so it asked me at the top, it started by telling me that Mrs. Felter's students they're building a model of their school's neighborhood out of blocks. And then the students measure the heights of the building to the nearest 1/4 of an inch, and then they record the measurements. Okay, so this table right here was their measurements of all of their buildings. So if I went through, if you keep in mind that each student measured a building, and these are all the buildings, every one of these is a student's building. So if I counted these, that would tell me how many students there were. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5, 10, 15, 20. There's 25 students. Okay. I don't know if it's going to ask me that, but it's always good to know how many they used altogether. I already went ahead and looked at the table up here, and then I recorded all of the information down here because I know that part you guys are pretty good at anyway. So I didn't really feel like you needed to sit and watch me do that. So I just went through, and as you've seen me do on these videos before, I just looked, counted how many were each of these. It was height. I looked to see how many buildings were each height, and counted them up, and then I just made my X's for however many. So for example, when I counted, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings, or 5 students' buildings that were 4 inches, so I put 5 X's above that. So I want you to pause the video, and I want you to take a second and look through here, count how many there are of each height, and record them on here. Okay? Go ahead and do that real quick. Okay. So now that you have unpaused your video, yours should kind of look like mine. Let's just double check to make sure yours looks like mine. When I went through and counted how many were 3, are these inches? Let's see, in inches, yes, 3 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you should have 4 that were 3 inches, 3 1/4, 1, 2, 3, 3 1/2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 3/4 should have 4, 4 inches we talked about should have 5, 4 1/4 should have 2, and then 4 1/2 should also have 2. Okay, so this part is not the part that I wanted to focus on today. Today I wanted to focus on when they ask you those short answer questions where you have to kind of compare the different heights or the different lengths of things, and when they ask you things like the title and the label. So they left the title out and they left the label out, which means I need to figure out what to title this. Now, if you look over on this one right here that we did, the title is just basically, what were they doing? Think of it like a topic sentence or a prompt or something if it was writing. So the title of this one on the other side that we did was height of bean plants, because they were measuring the height of bean plants. So on this one, what were they doing? They were measuring the height of buildings, so the title is going to be height of buildings. Just think your title should just match whatever you were doing. You were measuring the height of buildings, so the title should be height of buildings. Okay, now label, same thing. I'm going to look back here. The label, these are, what did these stand for again? Okay. And actually, I'm going to look back a couple more lessons. Hold on, because sometimes that's helpful. Okay, this is actually lesson 6 homework, but I looked here. Here is a label. It says inches. That tells you what you're measuring in. So I know like for this one that was on lesson 6, they were measuring the height of students. And here, the label tells me what they're measuring in, like what unit. So for this one, I know I'm measuring the height of buildings. The label goes with what do these numbers mean? Well, these numbers mean inches. okay? Because they're using inches to measure the height of the buildings. Okay. That's going to be important because I can promise you that on your air test somewhere, they could very well leave a label out and you have to figure out what the label is. The label is, what do these numbers mean? These numbers mean this is the inches. The title is, what on earth were they doing? They were measuring the height of buildings. Okay. Now, I don't know. Let's see. Let's flip this over right here. There's a few questions on here that I liked, and I wanted to do them together because those of you that were getting stuck, you weren't getting stuck trying to figure out how many students picked something because you knew to count the X's, or how many kids there were because you knew to count the X's. It was questions like these that if you were getting stuck, it was these types of things where you had to kind of compare how many there were for each different size or something. Okay, so I'm going to look on the back here on page 42. It says, how many buildings are 4 1/4 inches tall? How many are 4 1/4? So simple enough. Flip it back. Find 4 1/4. Here it is. How many buildings were 4 1/4 inches? 1, 2. Because remember, each of these is a building. This is 1, 2. So how many buildings? And then just make sure it's a sentence. 2 buildings are, and then don't forget, check this. What was I talking about again? Oh, 4 1/4. 4 1/4 inches. Okay. B, or I'm sorry, not B, C. How many buildings are less than 3 1/2? So not how many were 3 1/2, not how many were 3 1/2 and less, just less than 3 1/2. So again, flip back. Find where 3 1/2 is. Now, this is one thing that some of you are getting confused about. This is just a number line, okay? It starts with the smallest, and then it keeps getting bigger, just like when we do number lines with fractions, or just like when you see a number line like in kindergarten. It started at 1, and then it went 2, 3, 4. It keeps getting bigger. So this is just a number line. So this is the smallest height of the building, and then it just kept getting bigger, okay? So if they want something that is less than 3 1/2, or 3 1/2, that means you need to find 3 1/2, which is right here, and they want everything that's less than that. Well, if you look at this number line, anything that's less than this is going to be anything that comes before it, because remember, here this is the smallest, these are the biggest over here. So if you're here, if you want to find what's less than it, you need to find the things that were before it, because that means they were smaller. So anything that's back here is going to be less or smaller than 3 1/2 because it came before it on the number line. So if I kind of like took this, okay, so I need to focus on these right here, okay? 3 1/2, how many were less than 3 1/2? Not 3 1/2 or less. That's why I'm not counting this one. And then you just count them up. So do that real quick. Count them up. How many were less than this? I don't want to count that one. And then you should get 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many buildings were less than 3 1/2? 7 buildings were less than 3 1/2 inches. Okay. D, you should be able to do pretty well on, because this is one of the ones that I don't think any of you missed the last time. How many buildings are in the class model, and then how do you know? How many buildings were there? Well, these are all the heights of all the buildings, so if you wanted to know how many buildings there were, you guys knew this the last time, you just count all the X's. So if you went through and counted them all, how many would there be? So you would just have to go through and count the X's, and if I did that, I would end up with 25. Yes, write it in a sentence. I'm just not. I'm just trying to make it so you can see quickly what to do. Okay, and then E. Brooke says most buildings in the model are at least 4 inches. At least 4 inches. At least is something that you want to circle and star and do a bunch of stuff to it, because at least means is something that you'll see with these line plots and graphs a lot. How many were at least 4 inches? That means 4 inches or more. This one includes the 4 inches thing. At least 4 inches tall. So she says most of them are at least 4 inches. So she says most of them are 4 inches or more. That means more of them are 4 inches or more than anything else. Okay, so the first thing I need to do then is I need to figure out how many are 4 inches or more. There we go. How many are 4 inches or more? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm just going to put a little 9 over here. 9 of them are 4 inches or more. And she says most of them are there. That means most of them are here, not as many of them are over here. So then, well, that means I have to compare it to this over here. Okay, well, let's see how many are over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 are over here. 16 are less than 4. Here's 4 inches. 16 are less than 4. 9 are 4 inches, at least 4 inches or more. So when she says that most of them are at least 4 inches, is she correct? Well, if you look at this, are most of them at least 4? Like more of them are 4? No, because most of them are down here. Most of them are below 4, so she's wrong. Because this one has 16 over there. So what I want you to do is just take a minute, write that in here in a sentence. Okay? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And there are a couple other line plot videos and, not fractions, I'm sorry. Perimeter ones that you guys are going to do too coming up. So, you just need to make sure that you have your best math brain on this week. Thank you.